So you told me that I should test these mad foot cannons. You told me that if I'm impressed with the Puma Fast-R 3, which I most definitely am, then I need to try the Xtep 160X 3.5 Pros. Now I've only run in them twice, so this is a first impressions review, but oh my god. Let's chat. Hi there, I'm Chris, a journalist who loves nothing more than cutting through the marketing hype to tell it like it really is. And telling this story like it really is means going back through the very cool history of this shoe, and don't worry, I'll be very quick. The Xtep 160X 3.5 Pro is essentially a modernized version of the 5-year-old Xtep 160X 3.0 Pro. That shoe was released in 2022, and since then there have been various iterations released, as with all successful shoes. First there was the version 3.0, there was also the version 5.0, then there was the version 7.0, but despite all of the new versions, Xtep found that China's top marathon racers kept going back to the version 3.0. So they did what no Western brand has ever managed to do. They listened to the market. They took a step back and they decided to take the 3.0 and modernize it just a little, mainly with a better, lighter upper. And as a result, they created the 160X 3.5 Pro. After all, if it was the shoe that the nation's fastest marathon runners wanted to wear, surely it was the shoe that all runners would want to wear. And I think that's actually a kind of a cool brand story. It's like ASICS going back and releasing the Metaspeed Sky Plus, or Nike releasing the original Vaporfly with a better upper. And so we arrive at the present day with me running in the Xtep 160X 3.5 Pros. And wow, I can see why you are all so keen for me to try these things. The experience of running in these shoes is almost like having a little basketball under your forefoot. There is a very noticeable and very powerful kickback every time you hit the ground. And honestly, at least while the shoes are as fresh as these ones are, having just done 2 runs, it's kind of brutal, but just so much fun. Both times I've run in these shoes so far, they have hammered my Achilles. The very first time I could hardly walk. My Achilles were in such pain for the rest of that day. And I explained this to my brother Tim, who's also very much into his running shoes, and his exact words were, "They sound bloody awful." But they're not awful. They're kind of exciting. They are powerfully energetic. I'm really enjoying the process of running in the 160X 3.5 Pros so far. You have told me it's worth it, that you actually have to earn these shoes, and that the Xteps soften up after about 50, 60, 70 kilometers. But you've also told me that they never lose that incredible pop. And if I can't trust you, who can I trust? So I'm going to push on with these shoes because, as I've said, I'm actually really enjoying the journey so far. And by the way, if you don't want to miss out on longer term reviews of these shoes, and also of course lots of other shoe reviews, please do remember to like and subscribe. On this channel we do pay for all of our own shoes, so you can rest assured that the reviews are honest and independent. So let's get into the stats. What are we talking about here? The Xtep 160X 3.5 Pros cost me 188 Australian dollars from Taobao. I'm sure that in your markets, just like in my market, top race shoes cost a lot more than that. For example, in Australia, a pair of Puma Fast-R 3s cost $380. A pair of Metaspeed Edge, and indeed Metaspeed Skies, cost $400. So the Xteps at $188, including tax and delivery from China, are less than half the price of a top pair of Western running shoes. On my dodgy kitchen scales and in my US size 10, I do go up half a size in most Chinese shoes now. They weigh in at just under 250 grams, or about 8.7 ounces. And that's not light for a race shoe, and you do actually feel this extra weight when you're moving at slower paces. The weight does feel as if it disappears once you pick up the pace. But research from quite a while ago, I think it was 2016, and this was research that was sponsored by Nike, so we do need to take it with a grain of salt, said that for every extra 100 grams across a pair of race shoes, the aerobic demand of running is increased by 1%. So shoe weight matters, but so do running records, and numerous Chinese national marathon records have been set in the 160x 3.5 Pros. This much bounce, right now at least, requires a little bit of extra weight. Speaking of bounce, the 160x 3.5 Pro has a full-length carbon plate which angles quite steeply downwards under the forefoot. It's difficult to find reliable information about the shoe's drop, but I can confirm just from feel that drop is actually quite minimal. When you're walking around your house in these shoes, you can tell that your toes are up a little bit higher compared to where your heel usually is in a pair of shoes with an 8 to 10 mil drop. I would guess that if this shoe is about 40 mil at the back, which apparently it is, it probably drops to 36, 37 mil. It's probably just a 3 or 4 millimeter drop, which could explain why they've been so hard on my Achilles during the first few runs. The upper feels very advanced and it is breathable enough. It's not up there with the most breathable race shoes like the Asics Metaspeed Edge, but it does breathe well. Lockdown is very good. The lacing system works very well and the laces are high quality. The tongue is not gusseted, but it does have these two high and low, left and right lace loops, which do a really good job of keeping the slightly padded tongue very, very well behaved, both when you're putting the shoes on and when you're running in them. I've not had a single problem with the tongue of this shoe. Similarly, the heel padding is very nice. There are no hot spots anywhere in the shoe. And the one concern that I actually have is this little bib around the top of the heel cup. The only other shoe that I've seen this in is the Asics Mega Blast, and in the Asics Mega Blast I've found that that little bib tends to attract little bits of trail rubbish and it drops them down into your shoe. Now, I've not had this during my runs in this shoe. I've actually only run on footpaths and mostly on wet footpaths, but I found on the Mega Blast that became a slight problem every time I went off-road, every time I went onto, say, a nicely groomed trail. Every now and then I've had to stop, take the shoes off and shake a little rock or something out of the shoe. Anyway, that's one to keep an eye on. And as I said, I did go up half a size. I'm finding where I'm usually US 9.5 in Western shoes, in most Western shoes, in Chinese shoes, I'm more comfortable to go up to a size US 10. In US 10, this shoe fits me very well. I have a mildly broad forefoot and US 10 is a really perfect fit in the 160x 3.5 Pros. The shoes, by the way, are delivered with a spare pair of slightly stiffer inner soles. I haven't been brave enough to use these yet because this shoe is plenty stiff by itself. It also comes with another pair of laces in case you want to change out the black for the pink or whatever color combination you happen to order. Heading down to the bottom of the shoe, the CPU rubber outsole is as effective as it is beautiful. Both of my runs have been in the wet. One of them the morning after a rainstorm that came after a very long dry period, which should have been very, very slippery. But even in those conditions, these shoes remained really tacky and I had no problems at all. And this shoe really is all about the running experience. It's all about the energy return from this incredibly dense midsole. Running slowly during the warm-up kilometers, they're actually not terrible. They're very stable, they're comfy enough, and they do the job. But this massive and dense and energy-packed midsole foam is not really for running slow. What it wants you to do is pump as much power down through the forefoot of the shoe so that it can immediately respond with its very unique bounce. And when you do pump power down through the forefoot, the shoe punches straight back. I want to say that it's almost too much. It's almost too energetic, too sudden, too violent. But of course it's not, because that's exactly what we're after in a race shoe. Plus, these are early days, and you have told me that these shoes change a little in terms of their character during that first 100 kilometers of running. And perhaps the foam is worn in a little, and perhaps your body becomes used to the effect. Either way, they do what race shoes are expected to do. For example, in one of the sessions that I've run in these shoes, it was a very fast interval session as part of my current half marathon training program. I had to run several segments at a pace that I thought would be pretty much at my limit. I won't tell you what that pace was, because that would be embarrassing for me. But what I can tell you was that my Garmin watch several times told me that I was actually going too fast during those speedy segments. It is not something I hear very often at all. And it was all because of the radical bounce from the Xtep 160X 3.5 Pros. And in case you wonder why I always look at the shoe when I say 160X 3.5 Pro, it's because it's written right here. Otherwise, I'd probably screw it up. So the reason I tried this shoe, and the reason you recommended that I try this shoe, is because I absolutely adore the Puma Fast-R 3s. This is a lighter shoe that is ultimately softer and more forgiving and easier to run in immediately. Out of these two shoes, right now, my shoe of choice for a race would still definitely be the Puma Fast-R 3. However, I'm really interested in seeing what happens as I run more in the 3.5 Pros. Will I begin to prefer these shoes for their more energetic bounce, or will the extra weight of these shoes become an Achilles heel? Whichever way it goes, the 160X 3.5 Pros do need time to be tamed. And you told me that these shoes need time and patience. And all of this, you pre-warned me, is worth it before the Xteps can show what they're really capable of on the feet of a biomechanically imperfect 55-year-old bloke. I love these shoes. I'm excited for what they are now, and of course I'm also excited for what they will become over the next few weeks and months. I just hope I don't have to spend too much time at the physiotherapist along the way. I will get back to you on how this journey goes once I've got some more kilometers in the Xtep 160X 3.5 Pros. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out. Lots more running shoe goodness is coming your way. Until then, be well and run happy. I'll see you next week.